Prince Obinna, the sole heir to Eze Ndubisi, was a tall young man with broad shoulders and a handsomeness that could have charmed the land, if only his character were as fine as his features. But Prince Obinna carried himself with his nose in the air and a chest puffed like a rooster that thought the sunrise depended on its crow. Once upon a time, in a beautiful and ancient kingdom of Ndike, there lived a people blessed by the gods with fertile lands and clear rivers. Ndike was a place where the red earth met the blue skies, and the laughter of children mingled with the rustling of palm trees in the evening breeze. The kingdom stretched across rolling hills covered with yam and cassava farms, and in the valleys, one could see the glimmer of streams where women with colorful wrappers went to fetch water in clay pots balanced on their heads. Igbo kwenu, ndewono. The people of Ndike would greet each other warmly, inviting harmony and community spirit. The heart of the kingdom was its bustling central village square, Ilo, surrounded by clusters of mud brick huts with thatched roofs. Each compound had an obi, a white hut, where families gathered to share stories and break kola nuts with visitors. Bright uli murals decorated the walls of some homes, intricate patterns painted by talented maidens during festivals. In the mornings, the crow of roosters blended with the distant beat of the ikoro, the great talking drum that conveyed messages across villages. Fireflies danced above the grasses, and elders sat under the ancient Odala tree, telling folktales to wide-eyed children. Ndike was a kingdom alive with traditions and rich culture. They celebrated lively festivals. The New Yam Festival, where the first yams of harvest were offered to Ani, the earth goddess, and the Mau masquerades came out to dance in vibrant costumes. The aroma of roasting yams, spicy ofensala soup, and freshly tapped palm wine filled the air during such times. Drummers played the ogene gong and udupot drum, while dancers swayed in unison, their waist beats clinking. It was a land where the old ways were respected, where proverbs dropped from tongues like ripe palm fruits from a tree, each one carrying wisdom for those who cared to listen. In this flourishing kingdom of Ndike, among the ordinary folk and wise elders, there also lived royalty. The people were ruled by Eze Ndubisi, a king known to be kind but aging, and under his reign the land had peace. His palace stood at the far end of the market square, a grand compound with high mud walls, guarded by carved wooden gates. Within, there were courtyards, and one could glimpse the king's Ikenga statue and the elephant tusk he blew during ceremonies. The palace was the pride of Ndike, shining with bronze ornaments and the red caps of titled men who advised the Eze. Yes, life in Ndike could have been as sweet as the honey from the village hives, but for one shadow that loomed over the people's hearts, the arrogance of Prince Obinna, the king's only son. Prince Obinna, the sole heir to Eze Ndubisi, was a tall young man with broad shoulders and a handsomeness that could have charmed the land, if only his character were as fine as his features. But Prince Obinna carried himself with his nose in the air and a chest puffed like a rooster that thought the sunrise depended on its crow. From the palace to the farms, everyone in Ndike knew of his nganga, his excessive pride. On a bright Nkwo market day, the village square bursted with activity. Women from nearby hamlets spread out their goods on mats. ripe plantains, clay pots, woven baskets. Children chased each other, laughing, while goats on teeters bleated amid the chaos. Suddenly, a hush fell upon the market like a cloth dropping over a drum. Prince Obinna was approaching on his horse, a black stallion adorned with coral beads on its bridle. The prince wore a rich blue Isiago tunic patterned with swirling lion heads and a red cap tipped to the side as if even the cap must bow to him. Villagers hurriedly cleared the path. Make way for the prince!" His personal guard shouted, swatting at anyone too slow. An old woman selling dried fish scrambled up from his stool, but not fast enough. The prince's horse knocked over the man's tray, sending smoked fish tumbling into the dust. Obinna barely glanced down. He wrinkled his nose. "Filthy place," he muttered. The old fish seller knelt. "Ah, my prince, welcome. My apologies. Before the man could finish, Obinna snapped his fingers. His guard tossed a single cowrie on the ground as payment for the entire spilled tray, far less than its worth. "Take that and be grateful I bothered to pay at all," the prince said with a smile, not even daring to look directly at the commoner. The old man's lip quivered, but he dared not complain. He only bowed his head, picking up the cowrie with shaking hands as the prince rode on. At Mama Ugo's palm wine store, Obinna pulled the reins and came to a halt. Without dismounting, he barked, "You there, fill my cup now." Mama Ugo, a plump woman with a usually cheerful face, hurried to comply. She filled a wooden cup with foamy palm wine from her clay pitcher. Her hands trembled slightly as she offered it up. The prince grabbed the cup and drank noisily, careless rivulets of wine spilling from the corners of his mouth. When he finished, he tossed the cup over his shoulder. It landed and rolled to the feet of a young woman waiting nearby. Mama Ugo mustered a polite smile despite her anger. "Do you enjoy it, my prince?" she asked meekly. Obinna let out a loud belch without covering his mouth. Some onlookers exchanged uncomfortable glances. "It's acceptable," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Not as good as the palace stock, but it will do. Now, I will take that big pot with me. The royal household needs more wine." Mama Ugo's eyes widened. That pot contained almost all the palm wine she had brewed to sell that day, her livelihood. My prince," she began carefully, wringing her hands. "That is my only pot for today's market. If I give it away, I won't have any left to sell." His eyes flashed with irritation at being challenged. "Are you deaf, woman? Or has all the wine you drink make you foolish?" He leaned down from his horse menacingly. "I said I'm taking it. Or maybe you want me to report that you refuse your future king?" He clicked his tongue in annoyance. Mama Ugo shrank back, shaking her head quickly. No, it's yours. Take it. I am grateful you want my humble wine," she stammered, blinking back tears of frustration. Prince Obinna snorted. He motioned to his guard, who hefted the heavy clay pot from the store. "Good. Next time, have 2 pots ready. One for me, one for the rest of these peasants," Obinna said with a cruel grin. He spurred his horse forward, turning back to the main path. In doing so, he nearly collided with 2 small children chasing a raffia ball across his way. The horse roared up, and one child, a little boy, fell in the dirt directly under its flaying hoofs. The crowd gasped in horror. With surprising agility, Obinna halted the horse and swooped down to grab the frightened boy by one arm, yanking him up to safety. But instead of gentle words, the prince shook the crying child and scolded him at the top of his voice. Stupid boy, who taught you to run in front of a horse, eh? If I hadn't been generous enough to catch you, your head would be flat like a pumpkin by now. He barked, giving the boy a tiny shake for emphasis. The boy wailed in terror, tears and dust on his face. The child's mother, who had been selling bean cakes nearby, rushed forward and immediately fell to her knees. She pressed her forehead to the ground in front of the prince's horse. "Forgive him, my prince, Biko. He is my only child. Please, my prince," she begged. Obinna released the boy none too gently. He practically dropped the boy back into his mother's arm. "Then, teach him some sense," the prince snapped. "Next time, I won't be so kind." The mother kept her eyes down and nodded rapidly, clutching her sobbing son tightly. "Yes, my prince. Thank you, my prince. God will bless you for your mercy, my prince," she babbled in relief. He scoffed, already moving on. "If I want the gods' blessings, I will ask them myself," he said, flicking his wrist dismissively. Prince Obinna urged his horse to a trot and continued through the market, leaving a trail of anxious silence in his wake. As soon as the prince had passed out of earshot, low murmurs rose like buzzing bees among the traders. Market women shook their heads and clicked their tongues in disapproval. One old farmer, who had witnessed everything, muttered to his neighbor, "This prince, his head is too strong. He walks as if the ground is lucky to touch his feet." His neighbor, a bent-backed weaver, sighed. "True, he doesn't remember that a child who dances with arrogance today will dance in tears tomorrow. Power-drunk people never think tomorrow can be different." By a roasted yam store, a few others gathered to vent hushed voices. A man with a face shiny from sweat slammed his palm against his thigh in anger. "Sophia, can you imagine? Taking Mamugo's whole pot of wine just like that. Who does he think he is?" A woman selling tomatoes balanced a basket on her hip and replied, "Who else? The prince that will be king. He thinks that means he owns all of us and our property too." Nearby, an elder named Mazi Okafo tapped his walking stick on the ground for attention. He spoke in a low, warming tone. "My people," he said, "have you not heard what our ancestors say? When a deity becomes too troublesome, we show it the wood it was carved from. If this our prince continues this way, one day he will meet someone or something that reminds him he's just a man, not a god." The others nodded. "You see what I mean?" In agreement at the elder's proverb laced warning. Another added under her breath, "The fly that refuses advice follows the corpse into the grave. Pride goeth before a fall." Let's just hope we won't all suffer too much before that day comes. A younger man interjected with a nervous chuckle, scratching his head. Despite their complaint, no villager dared stand up to Obinna openly. The prince had a long memory for perceived slight and the power to make life miserable for anyone in Ndike. He could have the guards seize a person on a whim, throw them into the palace jail on false charges, or levy heavy fines of cowries that would ruin a family. So the people of Ndike swallowed their anger like a bitter herbal brew and carried on, praying silently that someday the gods of fate would teach the arrogant prince a lesson. One of the onlookers that day was a young maiden named Adeze, the daughter of a local hunter. Adeze had been standing at a store nearby, and her blood had been boiling as she watched the prince's display of arrogance. She was of average height, but strongly built from years of helping on her father's farm, with strong arms and the posture of someone unafraid to carry heavy loads. A red wrapper was tied firmly around her waist, and she balanced a calabash of fresh okra on one hand, but her other hand had called into a feast at Prince Obina's behavior. As the prince rode off and the hushed complaints began, Adaeze could hold her anger no more. She slammed her calabash down on the nearest table with a thud, causing a few okra pods to tumble out. "This is too much," she exclaimed, not bothering to lower her voice. "How can a person do this kind of thing and go free every time, eh? It's unfair." Her older brother Ikenna was beside her, a muscular young man who had inherited their father's height and strength. Ikenna quickly reached out to grasp Adaeze's arm. His eyes darted around in panic to see if anyone important overheard her outburst. "Adaeze, keep your voice down," he hissed under his breath. "Do you want the guards to hear you and drag you off?" Adaeze yanked her arm free, chest heaving with righteous fury. "Let them hear. What I said is not a lie," she shot back, though she did lower her tone slightly. "Every market day, it's the same story. That prince will just be doing anyhow, taking things, insulting elders, terrorizing children, and everybody will just be quiet and taking it." She gestured towards Mama Ugo, who was wiping her eyes with the edge of her headscarf while staring at her empty store. "Look at that. Just look at that. He left her with nothing for today. Is that no wickedness?" Ikenna's face was grim. "It is," he agreed quietly. "But what can we do? You know nobody can touch the prince. Even Papa says we should endure. The man get power." Adaeze clicked her tongue against her teeth, a sharp sound of frustration. "So we will just fold our arms and watch him continue like this? One day, he might do something even worse." She bent to pick up the spilled okra from the ground, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the urge to march straight to the palace and give the prince a piece of her mind. Her brother knelt to help her gather the vegetables. "Nne, calm down," Ikenna whispered. "I don't like it either, but remember what happened to Okechi." Adaeze paused, jaw tight. Of course she remembered. Okechi, a hot-headed youth from their village, had once shouted at the prince to stop whipping a villager's cow on the road. In response, Prince Obina's guards beat Okechi in the open square and dragged him to the palace prison. The boy had limped out days later, a shadow of himself, and hadn't spoken of what he suffered inside those cell walls. Since then, fear had kept others silent. Adaeze took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I remember," she said softly, anger turning to resolve. "But it still doesn't make it right." She straightened up, balancing the calabash on her hip. "Someone needs to teach that proud peacock a lesson, one he will never forget." Ikenna gave her a wary look. "Ada, be careful." "Which someone are you talking about? Certainly not you. Don't even think about it," he warned, wagging a finger at her. She jutted her chin defiantly. "Why not me?" He nearly dropped the pile of okra he had collected. "Ha! Will you keep quiet?" She whispered, eyes wide. "What do you mean? Why not you? Are you a warrior? Do you have an army?" Adaeze folded her arms. "I have my 2 hands and my brain. What else do I need?" Ikenna glanced around to ensure no palace informants were lurking. Satisfied no one was paying special attention, he moved closer to his sister and spoke in a low, urgent tone. "Biko, my sister, don't talk like this. If not for anything, think of Papa and Mama. If you get into trouble, who will help them on the farm? Who will take care of them? The prince can do and undo. He can even..." He trailed off, not wanting to say he can even kill you. Adaeze's eyes softened slightly at the mention of their parent, but her resolve was unshaken. "I know, Ikenna. I know I must be careful. I'm not foolish. But I can't just close my eyes and pretend nothing is wrong. We all act so helpless, but maybe..." Maybe there is a way to stop him. Ikenna shook his head as they began walking home from the market. The sun dipping low and casting long shadows of the siblings on the dusty road. Better to leave it to the gods and to Papa to talk sense into him. Or wait until he becomes king. Maybe responsibility will change him. But you and I, what can we really do? Adaeze looked at the reddening sky thoughtfully. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I have a feeling. Maybe one day Prince Obinna will push the wrong person too far. And when that happens, even his guards won't save him. She inhaled deeply, as if drawing courage from the evening air. I just pray I have the strength to stand firm when that day comes. Ikenna eyed his sister sideways. In her voice, he had a determination like the steel of their father's hunting knife. It scared him a little. He adjusted the basket of goods on his own head and sighed. I pray so too, Ada. Just don't go and do anything that will bring trouble to our family. Promise me. Adaeze gave a non-committal shrug, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Let's go home, she said instead. Mama will be waiting for us to help with the festival preparations. Together, the two walked on as the crickets began their chorus in the grass. Behind them, in the settling dusk of the market square, villagers continued to whisper of the day's event, each telling and retelling the story of the arrogant prince and the small injustice they had endured. And among those murmurs was the seed of hope, though they did not yet know it, the hope that someone brave enough might indeed rise to humble the haughty prince of Ndike. The next day, Ndike awoke to the festival sounds of the Iriji, the New Yam festival. At sunrise, women swept the compounds and decorated the pathways with fresh ocha, white chalk patterns. Men drummed the ikoro to announce the day's importance. The air was thick with excitement and the mouth-watering scent of yam dishes being prepared. By mid-morning, people from all corners of Ndike and neighboring villages gathered in the village square, dressed in their brightest attire. Women wore George wrappers and coral beads that glinted in the sun, and men donned their embroidered isiagu shirts and red caps if they were titled, or colorful woven shirts if not. Under a canopy of palm fronds, in a place of honor, sat Eze Ndubisi on a carved wooden throne. The aging king was resplendent in his royal robes of velvet and wore an eagle feather in his red cap, symbol of his authority. Beside him stood Prince Obinna, also dressed magnificently, though his face still carried a slight scar from the previous day's event. A troupe of drummers and flutists played an upbeat tune as costumed masquerades Mmanwu Spirit capered in the open square to entertain the crowd. Laughter and cheers rose as one particular cheeky masquerade in a brightly painted mask mimicked comic antics, pretending to chase a group of giggling children and then falling over. Even the stern-faced palace guards cracked smiles at that. Soon it was time for the yam ceremony. The oldest elder present brought forward the finest yam from the harvest, and the king himself performed the ritual cutting. Eze Ndubisi raised the large yam tuber for all to see. May the gods bless our harvest, he proclaimed. If things are good today, they will remain good. The crowd responded with a hearty "Ise" as the king sliced the yam, tasted a piece to show it was safe and sweet, and then offered peace to the ancestors by placing them on a wooden platter near the ancestral shrine at the edge of the square. The villagers clapped in joy. The festival was officially underway. Next came feasting and various competitions. Youths and elders alike lined up to test their skills in activities like archery with locally made bows, climbing the greased palm tree, Amid much laughter as contestants slide down, and a dance competition for the young women, Adaeze participated in the dance, swelling in with other girls to the rhythm of ogene and oja flute. She danced gracefully, but her mind wasn't fully on the contest. It was on Prince Obinna, who sat watching the festivities with a bored expression, occasionally whispering to a courtier and laughing. Adeze's anger simmered, remembering yesterday, but she held herself in check for now, shooting only a glare in the prince's direction whenever her dance brought her near the high table. By late afternoon, the most anticipated event of the day arrived, the wrestling contest Mba. In Ndike, wrestling was more than sport. It was a display of strength, bravery, and honor, a chance for young men to earn respect. The villagers formed a wide circle in the square, creating an arena on the packed earth. Drummers positioned themselves at the perimeter, ready to beat a rapid tattoo to accompany the bouts. Ikenna, Adeze's brother, was among the contestants. He tightened the cloth around his waist and rubbed some dust on his palms for grip. Adeze stood at the front of the crowd, her heart thumping with both pride and anxiety for her brother. He was strong, one of the best wrestlers in their age grade. But her father's word from the night before echoed in her ears. If you face the prince, do not fight him with all your strength. There is no victory in making the royal family lose face. We cannot afford their anger. She knew Ikenna had reluctantly agreed. Their father had made it clear that no matter what, they must avoid shaming Prince Obinna publicly. Still, as the wrestling commenced, Adeze silently prayed for her brother's safety and perhaps a silver of courage to do the right thing. The first matches began. Two young men at a time stepped into the ring to grapple, each trying to throw the other to the ground. The crowd cheered and whooped with each dramatic lift or flip. In one bout, Ikenna faced a challenger from a neighboring village, a burly youth with arms like tree trunks. They circled each other warily. Suddenly, with a swift move, Ikenna lunged low and caught the other fellow by the legs, hoisting him up. The drums thundered in excitement. The opponent wriggled mightily, nearly breaking free, but Ikenna let out a shout and spun, using the man's momentum to send him sprawling onto his back in the dust. The crowd exploded in cheers at Ikenna's victory. Adeze jumped up and punched the air happily. "Well done!" she yelled, beaming with pride as her brother helped his defeated opponent up with a sportsman handshake. Even Prince Obinna grudgingly nodded at that display of skill, though a flicker of envy passed over his face as the villagers chanted Ikenna's name for a moment. Several more matches went on, with winners taking turns against new challengers. At last, it seemed clear to all that the strongest wrestler of the day were Ikenna, and by his only insistence, Prince Obinna. As royalty, Obinna was not originally slated to compete with commoners, but he has stepped forward with a cocky grin. What is a festival without your future king proving his strength? He had declared. Many suspected the prince just wanted another chance to flaunt his prowess. Whispers ran through the crowd as Prince Obinna entered the circle, tying a cloth tightly around his waist. Some villagers looked uneasy. Who would dare to truly wrestle the prince and possibly throw him to the ground? It was a delicate situation, but Ikenna, being the crowd favorite and undefeated so far, was expected to face him. The air felt thick with tension as Ikenna stepped forward to meet the prince in the arena. Adeze felt her throat tightened. She caught Ikenna's eyes briefly. He looked calm, but she knew him well enough to sense the hesitation in his stance. The two young men faced off. Prince Obinna, taller and beefier, flexed his arms and smiled. "I hope you are ready to bow, Ikenna," he said under his breath, as only Ikenna could hear. I wouldn't want to embarrass you too quickly in front of your people. Ikenna said nothing, merely set his jaw and spread his arms in the wrestler's stance. A drum beat signaled the start. They clashed in the center, each gripping the other's shoulder and pushing. Testing strength, Ikenna managed to hook a foot behind Obinna's leg, trying to upset his balance. But Obinna was quick to recover, twisting mightily and nearly wrenching Ikenna's arm in the process. They broke apart and circled. The crowd was quieter than before, unsure how to encourage. Some clapped to the drum, others murmured prayers. Adeze's nails beat into her palms as she watched. At one point, Ikenna gained an advantage. He locked his arms around Obinna's torso from behind and with a burst of effort lifted the prince off the ground. Gasps rose. He could throw the prince now and win. Adeze's heart leaped into her mouth. But in that split second, she saw Ikenna falter. His eyes flickered towards where the king sat, and perhaps, remembering their father's warning, his grip slackened over so slightly, enough that Prince Obinna took advantage. With a growl, Obinna elbowed Ikenna hard in the side and broke free. In the next move, Obinna swept his leg and hooked Ikenna's knee, then heaved forward with all his might. Ikenna lost his foot, and to Adeze's horror, her brother went crashing onto his back with the prince atop him. The drummers immediately struck a triumphant beat and a few people cheered, but it was a hesitant celebration. They had all seen that critical moment when Ikenna hesitated. It did not matter, though Prince Obinna jumped up, raising his arms as if he had single-handedly conquered a tiger. He basked in the obligatory applause that grew louder when the king himself clapped approvingly. Two guards helped a bruised Ikenna to his feet. The prince strutted around the king, chest heaving and face gleaming with sweat and pride. Adeze's face burned with indignation. She rushed to Ikenna's side and wiped some dust from his back. "Brother, why did you hold back? You had him," she whispered fiercely, pain in her voice. Ikenna winced, both from the body ache and the shame of betraying his own skill. "Ada, leave it," he whispered. "It's better this way. Don't make a scene, please." But Adeze could not. Not this time. Something in her snapped like a dry twig. She turned away from Ikenna and faced the praying prince, who was taking in the adulation of the crowd. It made her sick how everyone was clapping, pretending the match was a fair win just to suit the prince's ego. She took a bold step forward out of the crowd before Ikenna could stop her. In a voice louder than she knew she had, Adeze shouted, "Why are you all clapping?" The drumming faltered and died. A stunned silence fell. All eyes turned to the young woman who dared question this spectacle. Adeze's heart hammered, but she swallowed her fear and went on, her voice clear. "We all saw what happened," she cried, pointing an accusatory finger at Prince Obinna. That was no victory. Ikenna spared the prince. He let him win. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. It was as if lightning had struck in their midst. Prince Obinna froze, his arms still raised overhead. Slowly, he lowered them, disbelief and rage contorting his face. What did you say?" he snarled, taking a step towards Adeze. Adeze felt Ikenna tugging desperately at her arm, but she shook him off and stood her ground. Her legs trembled, but she lifted her chin. "I said you did not truly win," she repeated. "You boast and strut around. But everyone here saw that my brother could have beaten you if he hadn't held back out of respect. You would be the one eating dust right now." The crowd was deathly quiet. Many mouths hung open in shock. Some elders looked at each other nervously, and a few women covered their faces, not wanting to watch what would surely happen next. No one had ever spoken to the prince in that manner publicly, especially not a young woman. Prince Obinna's cheeks flushed a dark red. and a vein throbbed at his temple. For a second, he was struck dumb by the sheer audacity. Then he exploded. "Guards!" he bellowed, voice cracking with fury. "Seize her! Seize that girl at once!" At his command, two palace guards in red tunics lunged forward, spears in hand, towards Adaeze. Ikenna immediately moved in front of his sister protectively. "No, please," he cried out, holding his arms wide. "She didn't mean it. Ada, apologize now," he begged. Adaeze's mind whirled. Fear like a cold claw gripped her insides at the sight of the armed guards rushing her way. This wasn't how she imagined things. Her anger had just burst forth uncontrollably. But she refused to cower now. Instead of apologizing, she shouted to the prince above the chaos. "It's the truth, and you know it. Arrogant man. You can silence me, but you can't change the truth." The guards reached Adaeze and roughly grabbed her by the arms, yanking her away from Ikenna. The crowd stared uneasily. A few voices rose in protest at the harsh treatment during what was meant to be a joyous festival. From his throne, Ezenubisi raised a hand. "Wait," the king commanded sternly. The authority in his voice made everyone pause. The guards halted, still gripping Adaeze tightly but not dragging her further. Prince Obinna looked up to his father in disbelief. The king's lined face was calm but displeased. "My son," the king said, addressing Obinna in front of everyone, "remember where we are. This is a day of celebration, not violence. Release the girl. We will handle this matter after the festival." Adaeze, breathing hard, felt the guards hesitate. Prince Obinna's eyes flashed from his father to Adaeze. He was livid at being challenged, and even more enraged that the king seemed to be taking a measured approach. "Father, she insulted me. She insulted the royal family," he shouted, almost incoherent with anger. "I cannot let this go unpunished. If we don't make an example of her, everyone would think..." "Obinna," the king's voice was sharp, now a warning. "Have you forgotten yourself? I said release her. Or do you mean to defy me in public as well?" The prince clenched his jaw. For a tense moment, he looked as though he might argue further. But the weight of protocol and the murmuring crowd held him. With a furious sweep of his hand, he motioned to the guard. "Fine, let her go for now," he spat. The guards immediately released their grip on Adaeze. She nearly stumbled but caught herself. Ikenna rushed to her side and pulled her back into the crowd, holding her tight as if to shield her from any sudden change of heart. Ezenubisi, with dignity, stood and addressed the gathering. "My people," he announced, "let the festival continue. There will be no more interruptions." He cast a stern glance at Adaeze and Ikenna's direction, making it clear that silence was expected now. "We will look into any grievances after the celebration. Enjoy the feast and dances." The king's decree hung in the air. Slowly, the musicians resumed their playing, uncertain at first but gradually returning to the rhythm. The crowd obediently clapped along, though the mood was now strained. People broke off into smaller groups, and some tried to pretend nothing had happened, while others whispered furiously among themselves. Adaeze's family gathered around her. Her father, who had been in the throng watching, finally pushed forward, his face ashen. "Adaeze, have you gone mad?" he whispered harshly, eyes wide with fear. "I warned you, did I not? Now you have put all of us in danger." Adaeze opened her mouth, words of justification on her tongue, but they didn't come out. In truth, she hadn't planned to cause a scene. The outrage had simply overflowed. Now reality set in and her stomach churned with dread at what might happen. "Papa, I am sorry," she managed in a small voice, looking down. "But I couldn't stay quiet. It was wrong." Her father, Mazi Okeke, rubbed a trembling hand over his bowed pate. "Gods of our land, please protect us," he muttered. "We must be very careful now." He looked towards where the prince stood sitting next to the king. The festival's joyous spirit was broken for their family. They knew the matter was merely delayed, not forgotten. Prince Obina's dark glare was fixed on Adaeze even as a troupe of dancers moved in to perform in front of the royalty. He did not smile, did not see the dancers' colorful costumes at all. His mind was consumed with thoughts of revenge. Adaeze dared meet his eyes across the distance just for a moment, and what she saw made her shiver. The prince's gaze promised retribution as surely as night follows day. Adaeze squeezed Ikena's arm and leaned into her worried brother. "This isn't over," she whispered. "I know," Ikena whispered back, heart pounding. "We have to get you out of here." Under the pretense of leaving to tend to chores, the family quickly and quietly departed the square. Adaeze kept her head down, avoiding further attention, but she could feel many eyes following her. Some amazed, some admiring her bravery, and many more fearful for what would become of her after the last yam had been eaten and the drums went silent. That night, a heavy unease settled over Adaeze's household. The festival had ended, but its aftermath hung like a storm cloud. Adaeze's mother quietly wept as she cleared up the evening meal, and her father paced the courtyard with a lantern, peering nervously at every distant shuffle of shadows. They had doused the cooking fire earlier, hoping to make their compound appear dark and empty. Inside the small hut, Adaeze sat by the door, gripping a sturdy ogele staff in her sweaty palm. Ikena was beside her, a protective arm around her shoulder. No one in the family expected Prince Obina to swallow the day's humiliation without retaliation. Outside, a chorus of crickets sang and the moon cast a pale light over the village path. Adaeze's heart thudded in her chest, but her eyes were fierce and determined. In the quiet of that tense night, she had made a plan. She knew that if the prince came, he would likely come with guards, and if they took her by force, she might never have a chance to stand up to him again. Her only hope was to outsmart him on her own terms. Earlier, under the guise of fetching water, Adaeze had slipped away with Ikena to the edge of the nearby forest where her father often set animal traps. There was an old pit trap covered with palm fronds and soil, which her father used to catch bush pigs. By moonlight, the siblings walked swiftly to reinforce it, digging just a little deeper and sharpening a few stakes at the bottom, not to kill, but enough to startle and hold a large catch. Adaeze's arms ached as she hauled off excess dirt. Ikena silently assisted despite his misgivings. He knew better than to try to dissuade her now. The fire in Adaeze's eyes was the same their mother had whenever she was fiercely resolved. They camouflaged the pit with a fresh lattice of palm leaves and a thin layer of loose dirt. When it looked as undisturbed as the surrounding forest floor, Ikena wiped his brow. "Ada, I hope we are doing the right thing," he whispered, anxiety heavy in his voice. Adaeze squeezed his hand briefly. "Go home and keep Mama calm," she replied in a low voice. "I will handle this, just trust me." "No, I won't leave you here alone," Ikena protested quietly. "If they come, at least let me face them with you." Adaeze managed a small sad smile. "This is my fight, big brother. You have done enough by helping me with the trap. If the prince catches us both, who will take care of our parents?" She gently touched the bruise on Ikena's arm from the wrestling. "You have already been hurt once today because of him. I can't let you risk more. Biko, go back." Reluctantly, Ikena obeyed. He knew Adaeze well enough to realize she wouldn't back down. "Be careful," he urged, before melting into the shadows towards their compound. "If anything happens, make the house call. I will be listening." Adaeze nodded and watched him disappear. Then, she crouched behind a thick shrub, a short distance from the hidden pit, and waited. It did not take long. As the moon climbed higher, casting silver beams between the forest leaves. Adeze heard footsteps on the path. Two figures emerged from the gloom. Prince Obinna, holding a flaming torch high in one hand, and a single palace guard armed with a spear. They were moving cautiously, trying to be quiet, but on a still night, the crunch of dry leaves under their feet was unmistakable. Adeze's pulse quickened when she saw them. She pressed herself lower, steadying her breath. Prince Obinna's voice floated through the night air, low and cold. "She lives around here, doesn't she? That loudmouth girl, Adeze." He practically spat her name. The guard answered softly, "Yes, my prince. This is the path behind her family's compound." They had indeed gone first to her home, finding it dark and seemingly empty. They likely assumed she had fled into the forest, and they assumed correctly that she might be hiding nearby. Adeze realized with a mixture of fear and relief that the prince had only brought one guard, perhaps to keep this revenge mission secret and swift. From her hiding spot, Adeze watched them approach. In the flickering torchlight, Prince Obinna's face looked set in a ferocious scowl. He had not even changed out of his festival clothes, though now the fine garments were crumpled and dusty from his trek. The guard looked around warily, evidently uneasy about hunting a girl in the dark forest at his prince's behest. Adeze's heart pounded. It was time. Summoning courage, she rose from her crouch and stepped onto the path, a stone's throw ahead of them. The flicker of the torch immediately illuminated her form. "Looking for me, my prince?" Adeze called out, injecting a taunting lilt into her voice that she did not truly feel. Inside, her stomach was doing flips, but she kept her chin high. Prince Obinna and the guard halted in surprise. Obinna's eyes narrowed to slits as he recognized her. "You," he growled. "You have saved me the trouble of tearing apart the whole village to find you." Adeze forced a laugh, letting it echo through the trees. "Find me? It looks like I found you instead." She took a step backward, deliberately positioning herself nearly to where she knew the hidden pit lay a few paces behind. "What are you doing, creeping around at night? Shouldn't a prince be asleep on his sick bed?" Obinna's nostrils flared. "How dare you?" he snarled. "After the embarrassment you caused me today, you still have the nerve to speak?" The guard shifted uneasily. "My prince, careful. She might have others nearby." He peered into the darkness around, but Adeze knew the majority of villagers wouldn't dare involve themselves. It was just her, and hopefully Ikenna listening in the distance. Prince Obinna sneered. "I don't care if she has the whole village. One girl cannot harm me." He tightened his grip on the torch and tossed it aside onto the ground, freeing his hands. The flame licked at some dry leaves, but it was still a small fire, casting jumping shadows. "I'm going to enjoy teaching you a lesson with my bare hands, Adeze." He pronounced her name like a curse. "Maybe I will drag you back by your hair and throw you in the dungeon till you learn to respect your betters." Adeze felt a flash of real fear at those words, but swallowed it down. She put on a brave face and gave a shot. "Respect? A true leader earns respect. He doesn't bully it out of people." She shot back. "You think throwing me in a cell will make anyone respect you? They will only hate you more." That hit a nerve. With an inarticulate yell, Prince Obinna lunged forward. "Seize her!" He backed at the guard. The guard dashed toward Adeze, but this was exactly what she had anticipated. Adeze turned on her heel and sprinted into the thicker woods, deliberately leading them towards the trap site. She was swift, feet familiar with every root and stone on the path. The two men crashed after her, the guard in front and the prince close on his heels. As she neared the concealed pit, Adeze veered slightly off the path, skipping deftly over the innocuous looking patch of ground that hid gaping danger beneath. In the dark, the guard did not see the change in the terrain. There was a sudden crack of snapping wood and a terrifying yell. The guard vanished as the earth opened beneath him. He had stepped directly onto the trap's weak covering. With a whoosh, he fell into the pit. His cry cut short by a thud and a splash of muddy water at the bottom. Prince Obinna skidded to a halt just in time, teetering at the edge of the newly revealed hole. His guard had fallen onto the stakes with a glancing blow and landing in a pool of collected rainwater and leaves. Likely bruised and winded, but alive, the guard groaned from below. "My leg! Ah, my leg!" Obinna barely spared him a glance. His eyes were wild, trying to track Adaeze, who had disappeared into the shadows beyond the pit. Adaeze circled quietly around behind a tree, waiting. The prince's chest heaved as he shouted, "Coward! Coward! Is this your plan? Traps in the dark?" Adaeze took a breath and stepped out from behind him, on the opposite side of the pit. "Coward! You came stalking me at night. 2 against 1, and I am the coward," she exclaimed, throwing his words back with a bold laugh. "Who is hiding behind guards now, my prince?" Prince Obinna spun to face her voice, fury contorting his features. In his blind anger, he forgot caution. "I will kill you with my own hands," he roared, and charged straight at Adaeze, leaping over the corner of the pit to close the distance. This was the final moment Adaeze had prepared for. As Obinna lunged, she sidestepped lightly and swung out her ogele staff with all her strength at his calves. It connected solidly. With a loud oof, the prince lost his balance mid-strides. The momentum carried him forward, right over the edge of the gaping pit where his guard had fallen. Prince Obinna let out a startled shout as the ground disappeared beneath him. He fled, trying to grab hold of something, but it was too late. The mighty prince of Ndike tumbled into the trap. There was a tremendous splash and a clatter as Obinna landed in the muddy pit beside his guard. Adaeze had intentionally not placed deadly spikes where she anticipated the prince would fall. She wanted him humiliated, not dead. But the drop alone was enough to knock the wind out of him. For a few seconds, there was silence below, except for the sloshing of water and sputtering coughs. Adaeze approached carefully and peered over the rim of the pit, keeping a safe distance. The dim glow of the discarded torch cast some light into the hole. There was Prince Obinna, waist deep in filthy water, his splendid festival attire soaked and smeared with mud. He was on his hands and knees, gasping for breath, looking less like a fearsome royal and more like a drenched cat. The guard was beside him, clutching his own ankle in pain. Adaeze couldn't help it. A tiny grin tugged at her lips. It was a sorry sight, truly. But after all the suffering he had caused others, seeing the prince wallowing in the mud felt like justice. She planted her feet and called out, "Not so mighty tonight, eh, my prince?" Her tone was mocking, but there was relief in it too. Her risky plan had worked. Obinna lifted his head at the sound of her voice. His crown, which he must have stubbornly kept on for the hunt, was gone, likely bobbing in the murky water. His face was a mask of shock and outrage. You wretched girl," he choked out, wiping mud from his eyes. "Do you know what you have done? I will. He tried to find purchase on the sleek earthen walls of the pit, but each attempt to stand made him slip back on his knees. He was effectively trapped, at least for the moment. "You will what?" Adaeze replied sharply. "Have me flogged? Throw me in jail? Kill me? From down there?" She snapped her fingers. "Face it, Obinna. Right now, you can't do anything." The guard groaned again, attempting to stand on one leg. My prince, I'm hot, my leg. He sounded pitiful and frightened. Obinna angrily shoved the man off. Shut up, useless. He barked, his temper flaring at the wrong target in his humiliation. The guard cowered, holding his tongue. Adaeze felt a surge of disgust. Even now, caught like a bush rat, the prince was berating his loyal man. You see, she called down, this is exactly why you are in that hole, Obinna. You think everyone is beneath you, even those who serve you. Your pride brought you here. Shut your mouth, Obinna shouted, splashing water as he shook a fist upward. When I get out, I swear by Amadioha, I will make you beg for that. His throat echoed in the night air. Adaeze took a step back, momentarily cowed by the venom in his voice. Her heart hammered. Had she pushed him too far? But then she remembered the faces of Mamugo, the old fish seller. The little boy terrified under the horse's hooves. No. She steeled herself. If she backed down now, all would be for nothing. She called his bluff. Do you think the gods will listen to your oaths after how you have misbehaved? Adaeze retorted. You can swear by Amadioha or any other god, but right now, the only thing that can save you is me. So you might want to consider your words carefully. She squatted near the edge, still beyond his reach, and looked down at him with boldness. Prince Obinna, future king of Ndike, look at yourself. All your life, nobody has dared stand up to you. You take what you want. You hurt who you want. And you think there will never be consequences. Her voice was steady, each word falling like a stone into the pit. Well, tonight, here you are. You have fallen into a trap of your own making, in a way. You thought you were invisible, untouchable. I am just a common girl, but I defended you without any magic, without any soldiers. Just my hands, my wits, and the help of the gods who watch over the just. Her words reverberated. Prince Obinna had stopped trying to scramble up. He sat now in the cold muddy water, chest heaving as he stared up at Adaeze. In the torchlight, she could see a flurry of emotion cross his face, anger, fear, and something like despair. Nobody talks to me like this, he said weakly, but the fire had gone out of his voice. It sounded more like a confused admission than a warning now. Adaeze softened her tone slightly. Maybe that's the problem, Obinna. No one talks to you truthfully, so you have never learned humility. She glanced at the guard, who was whimpering quietly. Can you climb? She asked him. The guard shook his head. My leg might be broken, my lady, he mourned. Adaeze winced in sympathy, despite herself. She hadn't intended to hurt the man so badly. Prince Obinna slumped against the earthen wall, breathing hard. Adaeze could see the fight slowly draining out of him as the reality set in. He was beaten by a girl at that, and utterly at her mercy. The night was still and quiet except for their labored breath and the distant hoot of an owl. After a long pause, the prince spoke, and this time his voice cracked, not with rage, but something almost like panic. What do you want? He asked. Is it money? Is that it? Your family will be rich. Just pull me out, and now I'll give you whatever you ask. Adaeze shook her head. This isn't about money, she replied. Do you think cowries can wash away the way you have treated people? No. I want you to change, Obinna. I want you to become a leader worth respecting, or at least to stop terrorizing the people you will one day rule. Obinna let out a bitter laugh, wincing as he shifted his weight. You think a single night in a mud pit will change who I am? Adaeze met his gaze. It might. If you are wise, it will. The elders say that when a deity grows too troublesome, You show it the wood it's carved from. Tonight, you have been shown you are not made of iron. You are just flesh and blood like the rest of us. You can feel pain. You can bleed. You can fall. She gave a small shrug. What you choose to do with that lesson is up to you. But know this. If you continue as you were, next time, it won't be me or a pit. It could be something far worse. The prideful eventually destroy themselves. Her words hung in the darkness. Prince Obinna was shivering now. The night air was cool, and his wet clothes clung to his skin. Adeze could see his defiance ebbing as the discomfort and exhaustion set in. He lowered his head for a moment, breaking eye contact. When he spoke again, his voice was low and strangely childlike, devoid of its usual bluster. No one ever challenged me, not even my father. He let out a shuddering breath. They always told me I was destined to be great, that I had the right to demand respect. Perhaps I took it too far. Adeze was quiet, surprised to hear this glimmer of reflection. Above, a breeze whispered through the tree branches, carrying the faint smell of rain and earth. Obinna raised his head. His face was still smeared with mud, but in his eyes the anger had given way to something new, regret and pleading. "Get me out," he said hoarsely. "Please, Adeze." It was the first time she had ever heard him say please to anyone. Adeze felt a small swell of triumph at that word, but she kept her face neutral. "If I get you out, do you promise that neither I nor my family will face punishment? And not just that, you will stop tormenting the villagers. No more taking what isn't yours. No more insulting and beating for your amusement." Prince Obinna hesitated only a second. I swear it, on my honor, on my life." There was desperation in his voice. "Just get me out of here." She believed him, at least. She believed that he meant it right now. Whether he would hold to it tomorrow or next week would be for the future to tell. But one thing was clear, he had been humbled. Adeze gave a short whistle, the call of a night owl, to signal Ikenna, hoping he was still nearby. Within a minute, her brother emerged from the darkness, carrying a long coil of rope from his shoulder. He had been hiding at a distance, listening and ready. Together, Adeze and Ikenna secured the rope to a sturdy tree trunk. Adeze tossed the free end down into the pit. "Tie this around your arms," she instructed the prince. Obinna obeyed without a word. Fumbling with the rope around his chest, he helped secure the injured guard as well, looping the rope for them both. "Hold tight, we are pulling you up," Ikenna called. He and Adeze dug their feet in and heaved on the rope. The prince, to his credit, tried to scramble with his leg against the wall to assist despite the slippery mud. With much grunting and effort, and no shortage of mud smeared on Adeze's hand, they managed to haul the prince and his guard up out of the pit one after the other. Prince Obinna collapsed on solid ground, breathing hard. The guard crawled away from the hole and lay on his back, groaning softly. Adeze and Ikenna were panting too, the exertion leaving them winded. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The prince sat there in the dirt and dead leaves, catching his breath. Adeze stood a couple of paces away, alert in case he tried any sudden move, the staff still in her grip. But Obinna did not reach for a weapon or call out in anger. Instead, he slowly got to one knee, then the other, and then, astonishingly, he bowed his head deep towards Adeze. It was not quite a full kowtow, but from a prince, it was shocking enough. Adeze's eyes widened in disbelief as she realized he was showing her respect, maybe even gratitude. "Adeze," he said quietly, his voice raw, "you have humbled me. I cannot pretend I will forget this humiliation, but I also cannot ignore the truth in what you have said." He raised his face, And by the moonlight, Adeze saw sincerity etched there. Tonight, you fought for your people and you bested me. You have my word that I will not seek revenge on you or your family. And I will strive to be better. The last line was spoken with effort, as though it tasted strange to him. But he meant it. Adeze felt an unexpected warmth in her chest at his contrite words. She lowered her staff, finally allowing herself to trust that he would keep his promise. Ikenna stepped forward, still cautious, and put a hand on Adeze's shoulder. The prince struggled to his feet, swaying a little. Ikenna, moved by instinct, reached out to steady him. Prince Obinna gave a curt nod of thanks. He looked at the siblings. From Ikenna's very supportive stance to Adeze's mud-splattered, determined face, and he almost smiled, a weak, tired ghost of a smile. Your father is a lucky man, Obinna murmured, to have children as brave as you both. Adeze exchanged a glance with Ikenna, who looked astonished as she felt to hear such a compliment from the prince's lips. Adeze cleared her throat. It was mostly my doing, she said, not to brag, but to ensure blame fell on her alone. My brother only helped because I asked. Prince Obinna raised a hand gently. I am not looking to blame anyone anymore. I gave my word. He sighed and looked around at the dark trees. We should leave this place. My guard needs attention. Ikenna moved to the injured guard, helping the limping man stand and leaning him against his shoulder. The guard was too frightened and pained to object. Adeze retrieved the prince's fallen torch, which had mercifully extinguished itself before causing a forest fire. She used a flint stone from her pocket to reignite it and handed it to Obinna. The prince accepted it with a quiet "Dalo, thank you." Another unprecedented word from him. Slowly, the odd quartet made their way out of the forest. A muddy, chastened prince lightened the way. A farm girl turned unlikely heroine by his side, and behind him Ikenna, half carrying the hobbling guard. They emerged onto the moonlit path near Adeze's compound. The village was silent. Only the distant barking of a dog indicated anyone still awake. At the entrance to Adeze's compound, Prince Obinna stopped. It would not do for them to be seen together like this, he knew. He turned to Adeze and Ikenna. His eyes, usually haughty and distant, were now level and acknowledging. Go home. Your family will be worried, he said softly. Rest easy. I will keep my promise. Adeze nodded. Good night, Prince Obinna. She hesitated, then added sincerely, may the gods guide you towards the right path. Obinna took that without offense. Good night, Adeze. He shifted his weight and glanced at the guard. And thank you for pulling me out. The words were quiet, nearly swallowed by the chirping of crickets, but Adeze heard them clearly and felt their import. Without another word, Prince Obinna turned, and supporting his injured guard on the opposite side, he limped off into the darkness towards the palace. A solitary torch flickering in the night. Adeze and Ikenna watched them go. Only when he was out of sight did Ikenna release the breath he had been holding. Oh my God, Ada, did that really just happen? He whispered, as if afraid to break a spell. Adeze felt suddenly lightheaded with relief. She let out a shaky laugh. Yes, brother, it did. They entered their compound to find their father and mother rushing out to meet them, both anxious and confused from hearing bits of commotion. Adeze's mother embraced her tightly, while her father demanded in a frantic whisper to know if she was all right, if the prince came, what the noise was. Adeze simply replied, Papa, Mama, it's over. I'm safe. We are all safe now. As they settled in that night, Adeze washed the mud from her arms and could hardly believe the event herself. She peered out of the small window of their hut at the starry sky and whispered thank you to Hachi, her guardian spirit, for protection. In her heart, she hoped that Prince Obinna's transformation would last beyond tonight. The dawn of the next day broke over Ndike with golden rays of sun, and life went on. Word spread in whispers that something strange happened in the night. The prince had returned to the palace in disarray, and there were rumors of him being injured or taught a lesson, but no one knew the full truth outside those involved. True to his word, Prince Obinna did not seek vengeance. In fact, when he appeared in public later that week, villagers were astonished to find him changed. At the market, he approached Mamugo's palm wine store, and instead of grabbing a pot, he paid her generously for a cup and thanked her. He helped an old man up from the road rather than push past him. People watched slack-jawed as the prince, who once would snare and boast, now spoke courteously, even offering apologies for past rudeness. When one of his friends asked what had come over him, Prince Obinna simply said, "I had a revelation. I realized I cannot rule a people whom I do not respect and who do not respect me." A wise person learns from his mistakes before it's too late. The villagers marveled at this newfound wisdom, not knowing the full tale of the mud-filled night that sowed its seed. As for Adaeze, she returned to her normal routine of farm work and chores, content to keep the events of that night mostly to herself. Only her family and a few close friends knew her role in the prince's sudden humility, and they swore to keep it secret for her safety. But it was hard to hide the pride shining in their eyes when they looked at her. Adaeze, the brave maiden of Ndike, had done what no warrior or elder had achieved. She had humbled the arrogant prince. In the evenings, when children of Ndike gathered under the Odala tree to hear folk tales, a new story began to be whispered among them of a fearless young woman who stood up to tyranny and changed a prince's heart. They did not mention names, but everyone knew who the story was about. Adaeze would blush and slip away whenever she overheard the children mimicking, "Hold your ear and say, 'I am sorry,' in a playful manner." Prince Obinna, for his part, became quieter and more thoughtful after that night. He often sought counsel from the elders and even from Adaeze's father, Mazi Okeke, who was known for his wisdom in the community. Little by little, trust was built. By the time Eze Ndubisi passed the mantle of leadership to his son a few years later, the people of Ndike had come not only to accept Obinna, but truly respect him. They knew him as a man who had tested humility and had emerged better for it. One bright morning, some months after the festival, Adaeze was tending the goat behind her compound when she heard an unfamiliar yet gentle voice call from the gate. "Is this the home of Adaeze, the daughter of Okeke?" Frowning in curiosity, she stepped out to the front yard and was astonished to find Prince Obinna, simply dressed in a cotton tunic without any guards or royal airs, standing there with a basket full of fresh yams and fruits. It was an unprecedented gesture from the prince. "These are for your family," he said with a warm smile, extending the heavy basket towards her. A small token of appreciation. "For the yams I denied you all at the festival, and for other things." Adaeze's mother, peeking from behind the door, nearly fainted at the sight of the prince acting as an errand boy. But Adaeze quickly recovered and welcomed him, taking the basket with a respectful bow. Their eyes met briefly, and in Obinna's gaze, she saw not pride, but gratitude and perhaps a hint of friendship. The prince didn't overstay his welcome. He left as humbly as he came, true to his new character. As he departed, he said softly to Adaeze, "I haven't forgotten who opened my eyes. I don't think I ever will." Adaeze watched him go with a gentle smile, feeling hopeful that his words were true. Though the kingdom of Ndike found a new balance. The arrogant prince was arrogant no more, thanks to the courage of the brave maiden. Their story became legend, told in many versions. Some said that Adaeze was a spirit in disguise, sent to temper the prince. Others insisted Obinna fell in love with the maiden who bested him. Whenever the elders told that romantic version, Adaeze and Obinna both would chuckle and shake their heads, though neither outright denied the special bond they had formed in adversity. All agreed on the lesson. The dance a child knows is what he dances in the public square. Prince Obinna had learned a new dance, one of humility and kindness, and he danced it proudly as he led Ndike to a prosperous future. As the sun set each day over the red clay hut and lush green fields of Ndike, Adaeze would often find herself gazing at the horizon, amazed at how fate had unfolded. She remained ever vigilant, knowing that life is full of twists and turns, and indeed, beyond the peaceful borders of Ndike, new adventures and challenges were brewing, waiting for the humble king and the brave maiden to face together. But those are tales for another day. For now, suffice it to say that in the beautiful and ancient kingdom of Ndike, peace and justice had taken root where tyranny once grew, and it all began with the courage of one young woman who dared to stand up and say, enough. The moral lesson. The story teaches that true leadership is not built on pride, fear, or power, but on humility, respect, and justice. No matter how highly placed a person is, arrogance can lead to downfall if not checked. It also shows that one brave voice, even from someone considered powerless, can spark change and challenge oppression. When we stand up against injustice with wisdom and courage, we not only protect others but help transform those who have lost their way. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Adaeze and Prince Obinna on African Stories by Byvee. If you liked it and felt inspired with their journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by Byvee, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.